Okay, no mai haere mai. Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming along. We'll open the meeting as we normally do with some pareo with a karakia from Cody.
Nā mihi o te rā, ki te whānau e hui hui nei, kia tau te rangi Māori, kia whakatapua tātou, mina mea, e whakapono ana tātou, haumi e, hui e,
Kia ora. Thank you, Cody, and welcome to members of the public. Thank you for joining us. It's nice to see reasonably full ranks today, and staff. I see the team there. I won't name them all because there's quite a few, so thank you to the QLDC staff that have joined us, and to Sue and Marjorie from media. Welcome to you. Ken is General Manager of Community Services, and he is our ELT Executive Leadership Team member, leader in attendance today, so thank you, Ken. And Jane, you are supporting the board for the final time, so Matthew is taking over, but so thank you for your hard work and everything, and yes, we certainly enjoyed your service and working with the board over a number of years.
Thank you.
Quentin is also part of our meeting. Quentin's not part of the community board, but he is, by my invitation, part of our discussion, and we value that as well. The meeting is being recorded, just so everyone is aware that that has been recorded and will be updated on the website QLDC later today. No apologies today, but I will ask the members if there's any leave of absence requests. Any leave requests? Yeah. Yes, sorry. That's right, Cody.
March 15th to March 30th. 15th to
30th of March for Cody.
7th to the 15th of March for me, and 21st to the 29th of March.
Very good. Anyone else? Everyone else local? So no apologies, but I will move that those requests for leave of absence be approved. Someone second that? Under seconding, all in favour? Okay, carried. Right. Everyone's read the agenda. Is there any declarations of conflict of interest that anyone would like to note? There's no matters lying on the table, and so we'll move to what I often say is favourite part of the meeting, which is the public forum. So we have 3 people that have registered in advance, and Mandy, I'd love to come up with whoever else, and we do sort of set these at about 3 minutes. So
yeah.
So the floor is yours, Mandy. We're looking forward to what you're going to say about water quality.
Right, urban water, a collaborative approach to management is what I wanted to talk about today. We've got many joyful family associations that Lake Wānaka that began as a child, and that's the norm for members of the Lakeside Road Enhancement Group, Mike Saunders and Simon Ellis next to me. I'm one of those members. My mother first came to Wānaka for holiday 75 years ago as an 8-year-old. I'm Mandy Bell. I've been involved in a number of ways with water, both locally and nationally. That's water quality and initiatives, and most recently the national level with the Aotearoa New Zealand Catchment Communities Group. The Lakeside Enhancement Group that I'm part of here, it runs from the yacht club to Ely Point and then up behind to the school, and it's mapped around the drains that all come into a stormwater in that area. We see our drains as creeks because they all run into the lake, and that changes how we think about that water. As long-term residents and holidaymakers, we absolutely love this lake. We know that the lake water quality has been downgraded, and we need to understand why and act accordingly. We also know that unequivocally that community-led, place-based programs work. Social science over the last 7-year rural programs have shown that, and more recently with Ag Research, Our Land and Water, and Wānaka's 2-year research program, Revitalising Tile. There are a number of parties working on water quality in the region, QLDC, and I'd just like to thank QLDC's been really supportive of the work over the last number of years. Regional Council, Wānaka, Guardians of the Lake, NIWA, LINZ, similar to 8 years ago when we had 13 groups around the district working on water, but they actually weren't working together and not connecting. The community at that time supported the development of a whole of basin and whole of community Upper Clutha catchment plan, and it's been the basis of some really positive work programs around the region over the last 8 years. What we see we need now is an urban catchment plan, and this needs to be integrated. Yes, regional council is a key part of that, but the local community and the community for Queenstown Lakes District Council, it needs to be integrated to be effective. That will provide us as a community with a clear direction, a work plan which allows us to maximise resources and in effect to leverage people like us to be working to help do the work that's needed. And as importantly, a coordinated information flow to the community, read the state of the water and how we can help. Our group has recently looked at stormwater monitoring, but there's been no coordination of previous testing and who's doing what. So we've put a halt to that and we actually need to take a whole approach. There are a number of groups already working with the council. They're doing some really good work, such as weed control, plantings and trapping, and these are groups in the whole rural area, but increasingly in town. I think we've got 6 or 7 groups now. There's approximately 20 drains going into Lake Wānaka, and there's the opportunity for house owners and businesses to be connected through what we call these action groups to understand their water quality, environmental needs, and work on them with the council. What do we know? What don't we know? What do we need to know? And what science is missing? So we have 2 asks of the community board, if you could support us, please, to carry this through. Support the development of an urban catchment plan, and ideally to sit within a refreshed Upper Clutha catchment plan that's been in place for the last 8 years and has shown to work very effectively. And also to support these relevant entities to come together and start the process of coordination of information flow, that's data and communications, two-way, and the monitoring of water quality in the Upper Clutha. Through these urban action groups, such as the Lakeside Road Enhancement Group, there are many people in the community that are willing and able to support these actions. Thank you.
So you see council helping play a coordination role there?
To be one party
Yes.
of these many that need to sit around the table and work together. And there's a really good, and it's happening around the country now. Ironically, it started here in Wānaka. There are only 3 when Wānaka with council set it up. And so there's a formula, we know how to do it, there's a model, and it involves all of us working together, and QLDC to take a major part in that.
Your area, do you think, in that role, or where do you think it sits within?
Well, I think, Chair, we need to go back to council and just connect all the parties, as Mandy's rightly pointed out. There's a number of our team are involved directly in part of the community services, whether it's some of the other community partnership groups. Your point, Mandy, just around how we look at leveraging all that energy is one of the key outcomes that you see around the country. There's some really good examples of that starting to really come to fruition. And I think about my own experience at Wellington, actually.
Oh, and that's interesting because Wellington was one of the 2 other entities that had a plan a long way back. So we actually spoke to some of those people when we kicked off our plan here in Wānaka.
So yes, we could certainly report through yourself, Chair, on how we had that internal discussion, and also with Mandy and the community around how we strengthen and look at the 2 points that you've asked for support, the enhancement plan and greater connection.
Thank you, Mandy. Points well made. Simon, you're next to speak to us, and you sent through some photos in advance, which I have shared with the board, so thank you for that. So we're preempting your conversation with having seen those visuals. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Firstly, I'm part of the enhancement group with Mike and Mandy and a number of others, and we're a bunch of volunteers that have worked in the community on the lake enhancement group, just enhancing the water between the Scout Den and the yacht club, and just improving it as far as pests and also just tidying the place up. So this has been going on for the last 18 months, and we've worked closely with QLDC, Predator-Free Wānaka and Te Kākano. Our main aim is to tidy up the lakeside walkway between these 2 points and enhance the beauty and access to the lake while encouraging the native flora and fauna in the area. During this time, with the assistance and coordination from Diane from QLDC and their arborists, we've identified a variety of noxious plant species, Douglas firs, etc., willows and poplars. And to date, working bees have been carried out, and the above mentioned groups have removed a number of these trees, and Te Kākano have helped plant natives in the area. We've also trapped in excess of 200 rats, possums, mice, hedgehogs to enhance the bird life in the area as well. Our next phase is to look at the area roughly between Mackay Street and Lakeside Road intersection, that part from the for the track going towards the scout den, and which will involve removing blackberry and general scrub for removing more substantial vegetation and opening up new view shafts for the lake. To facilitate this, we need to address the variety of watercraft along the lake edge. And on Monday, I walked along there and I counted 79 craft between Ely Point and the yacht club, some of which have not been used in years. We appreciate that those mooring holders, approximately 40, need craft to access their boats. There are a number of derelict yachts and kayaks which are no longer used and should be removed. Any craft with a mast, particularly catamarans, should be relocated to the yacht club. These should be identified, all should be identified, and then grouped in an area for either collection by their owners or disposed of. So basically, there's a lot of junk down there that really needs to be tidied up. And I spoke to one resident who even offered to QLDC to pull them out, restore them, sell them, and give the money to charity. But of course, that fell on deaf ears. We appreciate, we feel that there are 3 areas that we should identify as dinghy parks. This would alleviate the situation while tidying up the walkway and waterfront for all to enjoy. Dinghies being located in these areas would be then secured by hitching posts, and these facilities would not require regulation as the mooring holders have already been registered. So it's really putting the groups of dinghies that are needed for the boat holders in an area where they can use them and access them, but also to tidy it up and create view shafts and areas where people can go down to the beach. This phase of lakeside watercraft cleanup would require the council to drive it. We as a group would fully support their actions, but it's been a shuffleboard issue for a number of years. But now, with more people concerned with the lake and the health and beauty of the place, we need to really solve it.
Thank you, Simon. So there is a piece of work being undertaken at the moment, as you'll be aware of, to have put notices on a lot of this craft. So I think we have started that journey there. Possibly not happening fast enough for some.
But I don't think it's being done here. That's being done on the other side. It hasn't been done on this side.
It's only done on the Edgewater
It's
side.
only done on the Edgewater.
Second question. So we've started the general process around the lake. Who are your contact people that you liaise with in council at the moment?
Well, I suppose Nina is the Parks and Recreation liaison.
So there's a guy behind you called Dave Winterburn. He's just putting his hand up there, Simon. And Dave is Wānaka based and direct report into Ken. And I would suggest that I make sure that you guys tee up a meeting. You might want to just duck out just after this, because I think it is it's something that that partnership between the community driving it and parks being able to maybe find budget and resource for that would be really, really powerful. So I think that would be the best thing to do, is to make sure that we get a direct connection into the senior staff and see how we can start that tidy up.
That's right. Thank you.
John, I just got time for a couple of quick comments.
Given that the moorings go the whole length of that section you're talking about, would you envisage just one dinghy area or possibly a couple?
Oh, 3. I would think 3.
Probably 3
Yeah,
areas.
7.
You can't expect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was my thought.
Yeah.
Just briefly, Quentin.
Yeah, thanks. Look, support your work completely. I just wanted to highlight thanks for emailing your photos through. That has resulted in the pontoon that was relocated on Ely Point being removed yesterday afternoon with the help of staff. So thank you for that and drawing that back to our attention. So
Very good. Thanks for bringing it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Simon. Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
And, Dave's just behind you. Thanks. Our last person that's coming to join us today is part of the public forum, Nancy. So welcome, Nancy, and very interested to hear what you have to say, and to appreciate some of the mahi you've done in behind, because there has been a lot of work that submission to the ombudsman, etc. We appreciate the number of hours that must have been put in there, and being a community conscience. So thank you for your hard work there.
And Mary Gray is sitting with me.
Oh, got it, Mary. How are you? It's nice to see you in person. You didn't think you were going to make it, so great to see you as well.
So thank you, Simon. So I've recently become aware of QLDC applying to ORC in January for a resource consent to change the flow path of stormwater overflow from the Alpha Series development into the headwaters of Bullock Creek. Speaking as a property owner on the banks of Bullock Creek, immediately downstream from wetlands, I'm very concerned that this resource consent application only recognises Fish and Game Otago as affected party, and they've already signed it off. My property has been in the family since 1986, and before urban development began above the headwaters of Bullock Creek in 2015, creek water was pristine, water levels were stable, and the bed was gravel. Since 2015, I've witnessed many occasions when the creek has been totally discoloured by sediment and where water levels have been much higher than what I'm comfortable with. Even during the 1999 flooding event in Wānaka, Bullock Creek did not breach its banks. QLDC have recently been issued with an abatement notice by ORC, 3 subsequent infringement notices, as well as an outstanding request for service due to flooding at Labour weekend last year. Urban development continues. My concern is one of creep, whereas if this resource consent is approved based on QLDC and Fish and Game's assertions without validation and consideration of downstream property owners, then these proposed earthworks would reset the status quo. This could undermine the urgency of future mitigating actions within the Alpha Series development to protect Bullock Creek and local properties, as well as limit strategic alternatives which are available for stormwater treatment downstream. I have a summary here of community engagement with QLDC over the past 9 years around stormwater issues, framing the stormwater vulnerability of my property. This is based on my intellectual knowledge as a property owner. As a creekside property owner, I have not been included as an affected party in this resource consent application. The full details of this application, including intent and supporting documents, have not been shared with me. And so apart from reading the application, I do not know how this project will sustainably support protection of Bullock Creek and the security of my property and that of my neighbours on Bullock Creek. I have requested to ORC that I be considered an affected party in assessing this resource consent application. I ask that the board acknowledges my concerns and elevates this serious community and environmental issue to your agenda. I also ask that you make all supporting documentation for this resource consent application available for public consumption as soon as possible, as well as to inform me as to what alternative mitigation scenarios have been investigated since the pipeline diversion project was put on hold, and how does this proposed earthworks project support QLDC's planned stormwater management in the Roy's Bay catchment, bearing in mind that Stone Street upgrades are not budgeted in the LTP until 2028. Thank you.
Nancy. Is anyone who'd like to ask some more questions of Nancy? Linda, could I ask you, are we able to receive that electronically, Nancy?
Yes, I can see.
Would you mind sending them back through to Linda, because Linda heads up our environment portfolio, which is full squarely in, and just making sure that we don't have jurisdiction, obviously, as a community board, but we are able to represent the community's views and ask questions, and we've been doing that, like Mary and like.
Right.
And so it's just continuing to make sure that this is given attention and to ensure that that decision-making process is robust and that affected parties, as you say, the community is across that. So, Linda, are you okay to help continue to
Absolutely. But I also have to state that I was also shocked to see that resource application not transparently to the community, as we had previously requested that numerous times within council meetings, and so it was a surprise that that had been lodged without any consideration to the community. So I fully support where Nancy's coming from with this long-term, long-winded situation that's still not transparent within council.
Nancy, thank you for bringing this to attention. We've got a channel to continue to advance it and amplify it. And Mary, thank you for your support as well and for attending today. And we'll keep that correspondence going online as well.
I trust there won't need to be any more correspondence. I have been battering quite a few people.
You've done well, and you have your advocacy has been noted and is very much supported by us. So thank you. Great.
Yeah, thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, team. So that brings the public forum to a close. The agenda has been sent out. It's a relatively short and pragmatic agenda today. Is there anything that anyone needs an additional alteration for the agenda? If not, I will move that the agenda is adopted without additional alteration. Would anyone else like to? So Cody seconding that. All those in favour? Aye. We'll carry that. Now, our last meeting was quite a long time ago. It was on the 21st of November, and we circulated there was a lot of minutes there. So I'm asking if there is any changes that anyone would like to see to those minutes from the 21st of November. And I think there is changes. Yeah, exactly. So road naming, I think that there was a misinterpretation of what the motion was that we carried for the road naming. John, is that what you're thinking as well?
Yes, it is.
So Orchard Holdings Limited wanted to vest 3 names, and we agreed, and this is where I think the changes need to be, that Road 2A was not Packer Mackenzie Road, but was Packer Road. Road 5 was not Sybil McPherson Drive, but it was Sybil Drive. And Road 9A, we were happy with Ensor Street.
That's my understanding.
That was my understanding as well. We didn't want McPherson because it was close to McPherson, and we had an aversion at that time to double-barrel names. So is everyone comfortable if we adopt those slightly changed minutes? And I have actually asked Jane to make sure that if staff relied on those minutes to make decisions, that we catch this before it goes too far through the planning process. Has anyone got any other changes that they've noted from the minutes?
Yeah, I presume the governance that was recorded in the recording should support those names.
That's a good point.
Yeah, no, just saying, I agree.
You
I agree
mean
the change
the
that we
recording,
made,
yes.
but for governance purposes, the recording should support that change.
Yes.
Or that amendment, sorry, that correction.
Yes. Well, I'm pretty sure it will.
Yeah, no, I do.
So we do have, you're saying that we do have source documentation, that we do have a transcript of
Yeah.
how that decision was made.
Yeah, so we're not just making it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you could go back through, John, if you wanted to, and go back through the recording. Okay. Is there anything else for those minutes? Otherwise, since it's reasonably pro forma, I will move that the minutes from the 21st of November 24 meeting, with the changes we noted around road naming for Orchard Road Holdings Limited, those changes, otherwise they will be confirmed as true and correct. Anyone else like to second that? Chris is going to second that. All those in favour?
Aye.
It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Right, we'll get into the substantive part of the meeting today. We've got 3 items before we break off to a workshop, where we have a couple of items in the workshop. So who's coming up to see us today? Adam's here. Kia ora, Adam, how are you?
Good, thank you.
We're talking about a license to occupy, which is a sort of a veranda or overhang on 9 Sir Tinniwallace Drive. Anything you'd like to share other than what you put in your comprehensive paper?
No.
Thank you, Adam. Any questions or comments around this license to occupy? Wow.
Yeah, just a overall thing, noting that we're going to have a lot of commercial buildings.
I know where this is going.
We're going to go through this for every building, and so surely there must be some other way of addressing overhang of verandas on footpaths in the commercial area. Maybe there's not, but it's, you know, the work that goes into this from you, onto this governance, together in the agenda, put it through. I've got a question.
Adam, your thoughts around that? Has that crossed your mind?
I knew exactly what you're going to say as you were about to say it. So it hasn't until now, but it's a very valid point, to be fair. Yeah, there's a bit of work involved, and yeah, absolutely. If there was some way that we could fast track a wee bit, that would be.
Yeah. So you think there is a way that there could be some skin done?
I think there's some further discussion that we could probably get that to.
Hang on, Linda?
Is there any way that we can, from an urban design perspective, actually have some consistency with all these verandas? Otherwise, even though they come to the table, there's such a mishmash of variations within these that they aren't giving a consistent look through three parts. Is there any way we can sort of capture that?
Well, we don't have design. We are talking about the airspace, so we have a license to occupy rather than a critique of the design.
You kind of agree that design around this table gets you.
Yeah. I think we're probably, to Lyle's point, we're probably going to encourage that if you've got verandas there, you really want probably consistency, not over there, so rather than being stop start. So we should possibly be encouraging continual all the way down to Tumonga Drive. So if it's peeing out rain,
You've got to Howard Street, it's the same.
Yeah.
There might be some developer covenants on three parks to
We hope so.
drive some consistency, so we just need to be mindful.
I'm sure Quinn with his planning hat on might have an
Well,
objection.
I was just going to say, there's a couple of things here that some of the requirements that the three park special zone, rightly or wrongly, were removed by the more recent plan changes, which have changed them to three parks business zone and other commercial zones. So they don't hold the cohesiveness that they used to, and we don't have the level of control that we used to. Just regarding the delegation issue, I think there is a path forward to say that you could delegate responsibility for license to occupy that don't infringe on the footpath space, for instance, to sit with a general manager or the chief executive. So there's clearly a way forward on that, if council chose to change the delegation. But yeah, I know that the footpaths, the treatment of the footpath to the edge using those pavers is still subject to the control of the developer and is still intended to take place. So there will be consistency of paving and the width of the footpath, but as to what happens above ground level, I don't believe there's any control.
Okay. So could we ask you to just go away and explore that a little bit more, Adam, and see if we can get a pragmatic solution to license to occupy airspace by verandas above a footpath on St Wallace Drive, and if you need to draft that up for us to support it, or we can support it, and then council can change that delegation. Yeah. Anything else around this particular request?
Just what, should we just limit it to the Tim Wallace Drive, or should it be at the wider three parks? Otherwise, you could potentially have the same issue on the other main streets.
We'll leave that to if we think there's consistency.
Once again, it's a function of zoning in the town centre. There is discretion over verandas and even sort of permitted rules around how verandas are treated. Three parks is different, and it's obviously subject to a greater amount of new development than almost any other place. So they're slightly different, but yeah, point. It's noted. Yeah.
So whether we do it development wide or whether we do it stream, we'll definitely see. Okay. No other comment or discussion around there. So what would someone like to move that?
I'm happy to move.
Yeah, Barry's going to move that the license to occupy for 9 to Tim Wallace driving a second is move that motion be accepted. It's seconded by John. All those in favour? Anyone against? So it's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Adam. Are you just, it's just you? Yep, that's just you. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing that come back via us. Right, Matt, are you, Matthew, good to see you again. Now we're talking about allowing a environmental monitoring station for air quality from IRC and Upton Street Reserve. I thought we'd done this recently. I came back and said, I'm sure we've done this one. So what was
So you approved the public notification, and so it has been publicly notified, and now it's the recommendation.
That's what it was, so I wasn't going crazy. So last time we came, we sort of gave it the green light to go out to the community. Was there much feedback? No. Okay, good. Very good. Has anyone got, we've already obviously discussed this because we gave it the green light to go out to consultation. Any other reflections around this particular request for allowing at least for this monitoring unit? You all good? Okay, so I will ask someone that moved that we approve the lease for the environmental monitoring station for ORC on the Upton Street Reserve. Cody's moving that. Who'd like to second that? I saw Barry seconding that. All those in favour?
Aye.
That's no one against, so we'll carry that as well. So that's great. So it's excellent. And then the same thing for item 3 on the agenda, when we had the cell tower or the communications tower in Forest Heights, that did come to us before to go out to consultation or community. What sort of feedback did we have from the community at that point, man? Nothing. Very surprised.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised.
Can I suggest that there might be some reaction when the thing starts?
There always is. There's always reaction as soon as it's built.
Is there any plan to just notify the people that are these houses or back onto the?
It's an interesting one. Just to give a bit of context, this still needs to go through resource consent. And so the question was, do they apply for a license first or a resource consent first? And they've applied for the license because there's no point having a resource consent if we're not going to get them a license anyway.
So
there is the existing tower within Sticky Forest, which is like 2 meters from this tower's location. This one's proposed to be a little bit bigger, but it's not going to be hugely different to what's already there.
Will that resource consent be publicly notified?
I'm sure, I would doubt it, because the permitted activity to what they're proposing is not a huge amount of difference that's requiring a resource consent, but I'm not a consent planner, so don't hold me to that.
Gary.
Just a question for clarification. Obviously, communications towers on reserve land have to go through this process.
They do.
Does the same not apply to road reserve?
This does not, and I've had some communication with Simon on this. My understanding is that through the Telecommunications Act that they have a right to locate within a road reserve, and we can only provide feedback on safety related issues, but it is their right. So they can designate a location, pick it out, and we can only provide feedback as to whether it's unsafe. They don't pay rent for being in a road reserve either. So, yeah.
Slight anomaly there, but yeah. And you're pretty sure that that is the,
that's from my research. And so the other thing is that our district plan is quite permissive of telecommunications towers. So what's permitted under the district plan is quite large. And so that it doesn't need just necessarily need resource consent within a road reserve as long as they're complying with that.
Thank you for that clarification. Brenton.
Yeah, thank you. And I've got a couple of questions on behalf of the neighbour who is concerned about it. Firstly, you've answered some of them that they haven't determined public notification yet of the resource consent component, but in the case of the lease permit, where would that have been notified, and would neighbours usually be specifically notified of that?
It gets notified in local and regional newspapers, so it would have been in the Wānaka Sun and in the ODT. Where there's a direct neighbour, we would notify them. So for ORC, on the previous item on the agenda, we consulted with the tennis club and the Pro Club, which also occupy that reserve.
Would they have notified all adjoining owners of the reserve in this case?
No.
Is there a reason for that? Enough.
It's a question of how far do you go with that notification. This is, I think it's 90 metres from those adjoining properties from the eastern edge of that reserve to the nearest boundary on the western edge.
Well, they're either an adjoining property or they're not. It's a question of procedure. But anyway, look, the other side of this is the telecommunications code of practice. And we put a lot of faith in the code of practice that they do what they're supposed to do, which is actually that they undertake engagement with the affected stakeholders and parties, and that they undertake. Now, I think increasingly we're seeing that that's not being the case. Is there any influence we can have on those utility providers that we are holding them to the code of practice?
I would say in this case, because we are granting a license on a reserve, we can put whatever conditions we want on it. So if you want there to be further consultation with adjoining neighbours for them to undertake that, we can absolutely do that. With the roading, it's a lot more difficult because it's under the Telecommunications Act, but we can.
And well, I don't get a direct influence over this. So given that the permit is where it is and the resource consent is uncertain, I think putting some conditions around the code of practice is useful. And encourage the board to do that.
so that effectively that they would undertake consultation with the adjoining property owners in accordance with the telecommunications code of practice.
I'm more than happy to have that as a condition.
I think for you, Chair, too, on the direction of the Chair and the board around that aspect, just into the request, as Nancy's pointed out, look at that, this particular case. But also mindful for future, we're in a high growth community, and there'll certainly be further utilities that will be rolled out across that. As Matthew's right pointed out, road reserves are its own aspect, but certainly with reserves, we may make sure we're thinking about the aspects that Councillor Smith's covered off. To ensure there's a greater awareness, particularly in areas that haven't been built in, but have been developed for future build. So there's a few aspects to that we can certainly go away and have a look at. Around that code.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. In fact, I would go so far to say that I think we probably should be looking at that as a fairly standard condition of licenses, that we hold them to the code of practice. And just to Ken's point is, I think it's the question is where to from here as well, is what's the long-term plan for these service provisions in our community, and have some strategic approach to that.
If I can just make a point to that, when they selected this site or wanted to license this site, they said that the other option, instead of having a tower within the reserve, is to have multiple towers within the residential areas to gain the same capacity. So understanding what they're trying to achieve and how they do that. And so if we didn't grant this license, and I don't want to say yes or no in terms of that, but the flow on effect would then be in road reserves in multiple locations through residential areas to gain the same coverage and capacity which they try and get from.
Look, we're certainly seeing that at Harvey and other places.
Yeah, I'm very aware of that.
Yeah,
through community feedback in those locations.
I think with Connexa, we have to be cognizant that they did reach out to us as a community board last year, and they did put that quite detailed PowerPoint presentation together saying this is what we intend to do over the time, and that was certainly in there. And then we did have the ability to influence whether it went out to consultation. So what I'm saying is I do think, to be fair, that we've got to be, we've got to act on these things earlier rather than at the 11th hour. I think, because I don't think this has been done with any subterfuge or anything like that. It's been quite transparent that we need to look at those initial documents. And I applaud Connexa for actually reaching out to us and saying, hey, this is where we're going, is looking at those, and maybe we can make a role in making that more transparent as well out into the community to get that initial feedback, so it's not coming down to the actual license granting decision that we've actually influenced it earlier on. I do think in this one too, there is an existing tower, makes a big difference, and it is, I think, 6 meters away from midpoint to midpoint. There. Did you want to say anything?
Oh, just following on from that, we've got to be a bit careful. There is a process what we're asked for. If you're going to consult the immediate neighbours, now a cell phone tower provides a service to a large area, not just the immediate neighbours. So where do you draw the line? And if you don't have a lot of the people want the coverage, and they're most very rare there than, like you say, on every corner of every street where they have the ability to go into the road reserve without the same sort of controls we've got here. So you've got to be very careful what we ask for. I'll be very reluctant to start. Well, we can, I don't know if we've got to put it in the recommendation and what sort of consultation they do in the resource consent. That's the RMA resource consent process.
Well,
2 years it will be defunct and will be into some others.
we can only deal with what we know at the moment. I mean, if there is a code of practice, then that code of practice should be, we're not asking above and beyond, and we're not putting any criteria on here. We're actually just asking what is it, the industry's code of practice to actually be adhered to, and I think that is fair. And I think we have a role of the body to ensure that's the case. It's not over and above. It's just what should be being met. Does that come at this license stage, or does it come at the resource consent stage?
I'm not sure. This is what it is, a complex process, because they've got to go through these two processes to be able to get
Do I get a sense from, if we said that we agree to this license subject to ensuring that any industry code of practice is being met, how does that sit with elected members? Can I just get a sense there?
I don't know if we can put subject to what happens if, how are we gonna control or check that, or what happens if we come up, someone comes up and thinks, oh, they haven't complied, therefore the lease is not valid. I don't know, you've got to be very careful how you word that. We can recommend that they, encourage them to comply with their code of practice.
Well, they're required to anyway, but I think
That's
you
right.
just highlight that. But the recourse under the code of practice is actually the telecommunication ombudsman, if they're not fulfilling their code of practice. So it is a tricky situation.
So I'm asking for feedback whether we feel that we are going above and beyond there. I mean, recommend is a little bit light, but
there's no downside to it because they're required to, they're committed to upholding the code of practice. They're required to. We're just saying that we want them to.
We're saying the recommended council
in making sure that they do what's required to consult with the home.
Yeah, we've got it in para 3. They recommend council to the general manager of remaining terms and conditions. Well, he's heard our discussion. It's in the minutes. We're not relying on
yeah. Yes.
Student chair method.
Yeah.
Is that a point of clarity?
Yeah, well, I was wondering if this could somehow be tied in with the resource consent, because they're going to have to go through a resource consent for this, so we can make our license conditional on complying with what Deputy Mayor has mentioned, and have that as a condition within our license. I think we can do that through those additional conditions.
Okay. So would someone like to move the motion as it stands at the moment, or would someone like to move it with some adjustment to note 3 to actually specify the code of practice, or just leave it general as it is at the moment?
I'm happy to move as it is.
Would anyone like to second that? Barry, you can second that? Okay, so we are moving the motion that the communications station license for Connector within the Forest Heights Reserve of Wānaka be moved that be accepted. All those in favour? Anyone against? Yeah, that's carried unanimously. Good conversation. Thanks for coming over, Matthew. Good to see you. Last part before we move into our workshops. And our workshops today are on the Blue Green Network and on the Wānaka Asset Sales Reserve, which will be a really good conversation. And I encourage media to stick around for that second one as well. The Chair's report. This is my report. Pretty much summarises a lot of community engagement that we've done as elected members over the recent months. So thank you for everyone who's put that together. And I have actually had 2 or 3 people in the last week actually note when we were at Makarora yesterday with Cody going to the Share With Us session. Someone specifically said, I enjoy reading these community updates from you guys. So that was nice to hear. So it is not going unnoticed. Would anyone else like to make any comments around engagement or anything else they want to bring up in this general section of the meeting?
Look, January would have been a slow month.
Well, I must admit, the fact we had our last meeting on the 19th of November is we did have an extended period, so it did look well, yes, but then we should have all been on holiday as well at some stage. So I think it balanced out. There was a lot of activity.
It was a holiday, Barry.
Very good. Okay, well, that's for everyone to be able to read there and to digest where we are having a touch points with the community. So given it was my report, I will move that the contents of the Chair report be accepted. Anyone like to second that? Cody, thank you for seconding that. All those in favour?
Aye.
No one's against. Very good. We'll carry that unanimously. So, very good. Short and sweet this time. We'll close the meeting at 10:44.